a little more professional. The intro video, the live stream now, it's always a little bit nerve wracking. Anything can happen. Going live with this one, then maybe we can take some comments. Can't post comments to some destinations. That's why I'm getting a little error there. So we'll see if that works. If not, who cares? Don't need your comments. We're going to do the Ten Commandments of fantasy baseball. Now, and I got slides. I have a slideshow freaking presentation. So it's like new but old. We did notice Tim and I did the whatever Braves prospect preview yesterday, and the outro video, which is the same song. Shout out to again like my friend's band from 20 years ago. It's the same song, really good song, but I put it together in GarageBand, and it had the metronome, and I really thought the metronome wouldn't actually write to the final file, Like, that doesn't make sense to me why it would actually, I get it why it's there, so you can sync up your music and stuff with a consistent tempo or whatever, but then, like, it actually wrote the tick, 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 tick to the final thing. So I didn't change it, though. I might just leave it there. I don't know. Probably eventually. So anyway, the goal here is to be like more professional, more legit and aesthetic, but never fully. Because if you knew, like the first thing I said on this podcast when it started was like, this is always going to be crappy production quality, kind of just a staple. But so yeah, I'm gonna look at the Twitter stuff. I'll refresh that every once in a while. I think YouTube comments should show up here, and I can click them or whatever. I'll probably get some vulgar ones. Try to ignore those, but let's get into it. I will write these, and this will be a like a solid piece of content to maybe not this podcast, but these 10 rules to review, to cite, to mention during daily notes, write-ups, whatever. Like, these are the 10 big things that came to my mind. There's some more. Maybe even some editing, but I've got 10, my 10 rules for fantasy baseball. Now, what I should clarify first, let's see if this can work. These are not going to be like, I asked on Twitter, I'm going to bring myself back here. I asked on Twitter about people's input, and there's a lot of them were just like kind of too simple, and there's a mix of that. But what I kind of want this to be is like more specific things that I've learned, like that you won't necessarily hear everywhere. A lot of them you will, but I want to put my own little flavor on this to be a little bit more specific, a little bit lessons that not everybody kind of generally knows. But I guess maybe they'll turn out to be that. And if you're a really good fantasy baseball player, experienced, data-driven, whatever kind of person, then none of this is going to be surprising. But maybe it'll be entertaining. The main point is that I just want to be able to quickly, like, as somewhat humorously, like, cite these or yell at people during the year that tell me, like, I just, I just did this, Ron, what do you think? And I was like, that's a violation of the third commandment. So let us begin. The first one is, and again, like, look at these slides, look at the slide action. Know ye the laws of thy league with all thine understanding, with all thy might. I did wonder if this was like, as a Bible-believing Christian, like, should I even be running this close to like jokes of Scripture? I mean, the Holy Scripture. We really don't think that's just a book. So you have to be a little bit careful, So please know, this is, I am not trying to belittle anything whatsoever about it, but I did write these with a little bit of help from AI, of course. I wrote them in King James format because you kind of have to, right? If you're going to do the Ten Commandments, you have to like honor the old English translations. Of course, the Ten Commandments weren't written in English, but the people that translated into English talked a certain way. So let's do it. Know ye the laws of thy league with all thine understanding, with all thy might. I had like the heart, soul, and mind thing, but of course this isn't a soul. Your soul isn't relevant here. Let's keep these things separate. This is not that serious. But yeah, this is the classic know your rules uh, law, and everybody kind of knows that, but there's still an edge, man. Like, and here goes the heater. So it's cold now, and you're gonna hear the heater, and I don't know. It's just all these problems with the podcasting. There's so much stuff to consider. But I'm live. I can't go turn it off. So you're gonna have to hear a little buzzing or whatever. But even when you know this, like, even when you know that the rules of your league make a big difference, it's still hard to react to it like perfectly, like really, really properly. And the best way to do that is because all the stuff in your head and tying in with this rule, with this law, this commandment, is to not lean not on your own understanding, right? Like this is like a sub law of this, and also good biblical advice for your life. Like, you don't know everything. You'll never know everything. There's too much to know, and then you have all these biases, these cognitive biases that fool you. Anyway, point being here that in your head, if you're just like, okay, I'm an my league has OBP instead of batting average. Like, okay, that probably means that like Matt Wallner's a little bit better because he walks a lot. His batting average is terrible, but he walks a lot, so it kind of makes up for it when you get ready to batting average. And in your head, you can make that adjustment, but it's hard to do that, first of all, for like the hundreds of players you need to consider, and then it's hard to do that to actually know how much that boosts him up. I mean, it doesn't push him up into the top 30 hitter, but it does push him up, I don't know, like 5 to 10 slots in the outfield or something like that. So the key point is to use projections, man. I mean, most people do, I guess, and but there's a contingent of people that really are against projections and go against them, and I get it. Like, projections don't capture everything. They don't properly capture maybe like upsides, downsides, 10th percentile, 90th percentile and stuff. So you don't want to just totally like get your steamer projections, get the auction values and draft off of that. You got to do a little bit more than that. Also, that's just not as fun. But it's super, super useful in getting player values with the standard format, and then tuning them to your own league, and then seeing who changes, see who moves up. Or just forget the standard stuff. Just plug in your league settings to a auction value calculator, and then use that as a template. And at MLB Data Warehouse next year, I will have a very, very good tool for this where you can plug in your league settings. It will use my projections to give you those new values. So, yeah, I mean, that's just super important going into the draft. And there's just all kinds of value you can get when guys are looking at rankings or projections or whatever based on league settings that don't fit your own. And in some ways, like if you're making a league and you really want, if you're creating a league, or if you're a commissioner of a league that doesn't have the sharpest people, like put some weird categories in there, right? Like, because if you're going to be better, make your league as different from the standard as possible, because then you can adjust to that more properly than others, and then benefit like that. That's number one, know your rules. Or more properly said on the screen. Let's go to commandment number 2. Thou shalt not cleave unto the small sample, nor shalt thou exalt it above wisdom. Not the greatest second half of that. That I probably, I would have written that one a little bit differently. Don't exalt it above the larger sample. This is also just like basic stuff. But even, the more specific point is don't cut stuff in half. There's some situations where maybe it's warranted. So what I'm thinking of specifically with this, but it applies to different situations, is like first half, second half. So I even wrote an article lately about like late season surgers or whatever. But in that article, I said, so what happens is that a lot of times you play fantasy baseball, your team sucks. You start playing football, whatever. You kind of start paying attention in August, and then it's good to go back as a content person. Scott White, shout out to him. I think I got this idea from him. He does this every year. Like, here's what you missed after a football season. So a really good idea. There's like this kind of pressure to take the most recent sample more heavily than the more distant sample. And there's, generally that's going to be true. Like if you had to pick older or newer, you take the newer round. Like the more recent stuff is always going to be a little bit more telling. But point is, don't overreact. Don't make your values, your player list, whatever, your draft list based on what happened in the last 2 months. Like if a guy stunk for 4 months and then was awesome for 2 months, don't all of a sudden think he's great. Like you have to consider those 4 months. Just because they were 4 months earlier doesn't mean they're not almost exactly as valuable. So take bigger samples over smaller. I mean, it even applies to like minor league stuff. Like Jacob Mizorowski's a decent example, and not the greatest example, but a decent one. Like, so this guy had 2 or 3 years worth or whatever, maybe only like one full season's worth of pitching in the minor leagues, but he couldn't throw strikes. Like he had a 12% walk rate or something, and then he comes into the major leagues and he makes 2 starts and like, or I don't know, 2, 3, 4 starts and had like a 7 or 8% walk rate or something like that. And people were like, "Oh, he doesn't have a walk problem anymore." It's like, well, I mean, it's okay. So you're just throwing away that larger minor league sample and saying that all of a sudden he's gonna like just not have this problem. And again, not the greatest example because walk rates can be a little bit weird, but always look to the bigger sample. Take that. And this is the proper way to do projections: is that you start with the bigger sample. And this is kind of how Tim like has done the F scores as well, as we've been talking about a lot. You do weigh the recent stuff a little bit. Like you put that in there. Basically, you'll take like just a rough thing. Like if you want to project somebody's K rate, okay, start with their career K rate, or at least like last 3 years, like a big sample. And then maybe you can look at the last year and maybe you can weigh them like 80-20. Like, okay, I think he'll probably be 80% of what he's done for his career and then 20% of more recently. And you can adjust it like that. I think that's fine. It's probably pretty proper because sometimes things do change and you get a signal of that early on. But yeah, and again, like, this applies all over the place. So you got to keep this in mind. These are just general rules to kind of follow, and then they apply more off. This is a bigger rule than just like, okay, yeah, like don't trust a guy who's only been in the major leagues for 3 weeks, or don't think that that's who he really is, or even like first half, second half stuff. It's more than that. And I think there's going to be another one that's a lot like that. But for now, we're going to number 3. Verily, strikeouts to walks are sovereign. He that hath command is king. Lower cases everywhere. We're not talking about any deities or anything like that. This is just like, I guess I said that I wanted to make these more like specific to MLB DW Warehouse, but so far they're not. K to walk ratio, like, it's just proven every year. They in Sierra, you could put in Sierra XFIP as well, because the thing about K to walk ratio and Sierra and these other ERA indicator things, like, they're basically the same thing. Like, Sierra and XFIP are just K to walk ratio with a little bit of an addition for ground ball rate or home run to fly ball stuff, like the 3 inputs: Ks, walks, home run suppression. And no matter what you come up with, pitching plus, stuff plus, IVB, all the granular stuff, they have their uses. I don't want to poo-poo every new thing. You think I would be a real new thing guy, because it's kind of the whole thing I do is advanced baseball stats. But no matter what comes out, K to walk always beats it, predicting the future. So it's a really good idea to take the K to walk leaders that had bad seasons and draft them the next year. I really like doing that. There'll be an article about that. Guys that had competitive K to walk ratios, 16, 17% or greater, but had a bad ERA because they gave up a bunch of home runs. So K to walk ratio, pretty sticky. Stuff that happens on contact, not too sticky. And if you give me an 18, 19, 20% K to walk ratio, like, I want to bet on that guy every time. It doesn't mean it's foolproof. You can have a year where you give up a bunch of home runs and some bad luck and stuff. But yeah, just always look first at the gap between strikeouts and walks. The other part of this that I've realized is that I've been calling it K2 walk rate when I'm always citing is your K rate minus the walk rate. So the gap between your K rate, like 25%, and your walk rate, like 8%, 17%. I call that K to walk ratio. That's not right, because then I hear other people they say K minus BB, and that's more proper, because, I mean, subtraction is a ratio in some ways, but I've been saying K to walk ratio when I mean K minus BB, but K to walk ratio sounds better, so I think I'm just going to keep doing it. A K to walk ratio would be like a 5 or a 4, but a K minus walk is like a percentage. So anyway, maybe we should speed up. Let's see if we can get something unique. Okay, here's a good one. Thou shalt buy low on the hitter of the second year, and thy patience shall be rewarded. So this is about the prospects, the hyped prospect bats, the hitters. This is all about top prospect hitters who come up and they almost always stink right away. I don't know. There are some examples. I didn't prepare them. I mean, Juan Soto is the one that everybody will remember that I remember. I guess that's been a while ago now. It's probably almost 10 years. But he was just like immediately good. He got better, but he was immediately like extremely good. But everybody else, not everybody else, but the vast majority of hitting prospects, no matter how good they were in the minors, there's an adjustment period. And the key point, what I think I've drilled down, is to just like forget the first 100 plate appearances. That's really important for adjusting. You need that 100 plate appearances or so, even more. I mean, a lot of guys take a lot more than that. But I mean, you name a top hitting prospect of recent years, look at their first 50 to 100 to 150 plate appearances, and you're very rarely going to find someone that came in and started crushing immediately. I mean, even Nick Kurtz this year, with how amazing he was, I mean, clear rookie of the year, right? Hit 30 some homers, 30 on the dot in, I mean, a little bit more than half a season, but even that was bad for the first 80, 90 plate appearances or whatever it was. So it's a really good buy. Now, obviously, in the Kurtz situation, he figured it out pretty quick, and he's going to be like a first or second round pick next year, so it doesn't apply to him. But some of these other guys that kind of come up in June or July and kind of stink, everybody kind of wanted them in June or July, and then they stink, and then the market goes down on them a little bit, and you can get a nice discount on them. So really, the top hitting prospect, I want their like production from really 200. I mean, 150, 200 plate appearances. If someone else can take that first 100, 150, and then I can buy low on that, which was Kurtz is a good example of that, because it was pretty easy to see him turning things around after like 50 or so plate appearances, and then he just went totally off, and you really could have gotten a nice price on him. Obviously, very few guys are going to do what he did that quickly, but yeah, like you have to respect this adjustment period from minors to majors. It's super true. We're in football season right now. Crazy true with quarterbacks too. Like there was someone's talking about like this morning how Spencer Rattler, Saints quarterback, just notoriously awful. He was easily viewed as the 30th best starting quarterback in the league at the beginning, or 32nd, like the worst. But he's outplayed these rookies, like easily this year. He's been about a league average quarterback, maybe a little bit below. But then some of these rookies, Cam Ward, the number one overall pick, has been absolutely terrible, like probably the worst. And it's like, is Spencer Rattler better at playing quarterback than Cam Ward? Like skill wise, talent wise, no, of course not. But the experience means so much, and more with quarterback than with a baseball hitter. But yeah, I mean, it's a totally different thing going from college or minor leagues in baseball or football to then facing the best, especially the best pitchers, because it really doesn't compare. I mean, the major league pitchers are just the command and movement like you've never seen before. There's a reason they're in the major leagues. And there's a reason the minor league guys you faced before that are not. So buy low, be patient. And it also says like be patient. Okay, if you have the rookie on your team, the last thing you want to do is get down on them because they are really terrible for a half a season or whatever. Like if you have them, you're invested. Maybe you don't have to start them right away. I don't know, but don't give up on them. You want to be buying low on these guys. Take advantage of their early career struggles. If it's like if 3 years go by, then okay, I'm not saying you ride them until forever. I mean, at some point you have to get production, but easily forgiving 2-3 months of stuff. Like don't even budge. Honor regression, for it cometh unto all men, both the mighty and the feeble. I like that wording for that one. Everything regresses, and this isn't even just. I mean, I think I have to shout out Derek Carty on this. I was talking to him on a podcast one time about projections and stuff, and he made this point to me. It just comes with experience. Like everything, you regress everything, even things you don't think will regress. Like even like steals is a good one, right? Ellie De La Cruz stole 60-70 bases a couple of years ago, and there's no reason to think a lot of people's mind, like there was no reason to think that's not what you should project going forward or what you should expect. Because steals doesn't seem like something that regresses. There's no luck involved with it. You're not hitting a ball and hoping it falls in play. You're getting on base, and then you're running, and you have speed. You're assuming you don't lose speed. The point being, there's like stolen bases doesn't seem like something that you would want to regress toward the mean, but you should. I mean, outliers, no matter what the outlier is, even Aaron Judge, right? Even Aaron Judge's barrel rate should probably be regressed every year if it's 25%. Okay, if the average player has an 8% barrel rate, and some guy, no matter how good they are, no matter how like first ballot Hall of Fame they are, you might not be right every time. But if you're gonna say, okay, this guy had an outlier barrel rate last year, 27, 28%, like the proper thing to do is expect that to come down, because outliers just more often than not come down. So everything, I mean, expect regression on everything toward the mean. And there's better and worse statistical ways to do it, but yeah, my projections pretty much do that. I mean, we regress everything, things you don't think you should, just like bring everything a little bit tighter, because that's just how the world goes, right? Like there is There's a rhyme and a rhythm, and there's a mean point, and everything just tends to go toward that as we move through time. I'm not sure an exact great application for that. I guess it would be like what I just said. I don't know, not Aaron Judge because he's proven it, but if some hitter has for the first 2 months of the season a 24% barrel rate or 21% or whatever, something crazy high, then you should just, in your mind at least, and in your own valuation of the player, expect it to regress down toward the mean. And if you do that every single time, you'll be better off for it. I get, skill stuff, fastball velocity, right? You don't expect the guy to regress toward the mean on that. This is a straight skill, but other things like that. So it's a general rule here. We're not getting into any crazy specifics, but regression is coming all the time. Fact of life. Number 6, I think, thou shalt discern the slow starter and the fast starter and profit thereby. This is really, I guess, the same as small samples, but it functions differently. This is the awesome thing you can do every late April, mid-April, depending on how jumpy your league mates are. Rafael Devers, great example this year. Okay, so this is the good way to think about it. And I guess everybody already knows. I'm not breaking any new ground here, but I really like this one. Because pick any player. Go ahead, pick a hitter that played all year, that didn't go on the IL. You will be able to find 2 weeks in there where they looked really good, or at least way better than they actually were, and vice versa. They'll have 2 weeks, 3 weeks where they were really bad. But if that bad stuff happened in, if their worst 2 weeks were in late July, you don't even notice that because their statistics, their batting average is already, there's a big enough sample behind it with 3.5 months worth of data where a bad streak takes your batting average from 270 to 255 or something like that. Not a huge difference. Now, since in April, since the first 3 weeks of the season are all you have, it's 100% of the sample, 100% of that poor 3-week thing, that's what you see on the player cards. And no matter how well this, it's still hard to look at that, to look at a guy on your team that's hitting 150 and not be I kind of want to get rid of this guy. And vice versa. So take advantage of the fact that after the first month of the season, or whatever small sample you want to put in, that is the perfect time. Buy high, and buy low and sell high, especially on hitters, but pitchers as well. It's a really good practice to look at get the projections you most like, and then at the end of April, after 4 or 5 weeks, compare what was projected and what actually happened, and then you'll be looking to sell the guys that are overperforming the projection and buy the guys that are underperforming. And it doesn't mean that there aren't breakouts. It doesn't mean the projections aren't horribly wrong a lot, but it's just those projections will predict the final 5 months of the season better than the first month of the season does. Because just 3 weeks of baseball, whatever it is, super, super random, super, super wonky. And again, remember Devers? I mean, people, I don't know, nobody in my league was willing to actually, the guy that had him wasn't willing to give up on him, but there were certainly people where Devers just looked totally washed. I mean, he was striking out a ton. It just looked awful. And then there was, if nothing else, you could have acquired him for less than his draft cost, right? Because it's hard. I mean, especially when the underlying stuff is there too. Devers was striking out, I don't remember, 30-35% of the time, totally uncharacteristic for him. And that did raise some legitimate questions, is he playing hurt or whatever, but it doesn't matter. I mean, okay, he's doing this much worse than we thought. I'm going to try to get him, and that would have worked perfectly with him because he ended up with just a normal season for him, even with a team change and the slow start, the numbers were still pretty great. So buy low, sell high. This one is specifically about those first few weeks of the year when those 3 weeks of randomness are, people kind of take it as the truth. So let's go to number 7. Thou shalt place thy trust in talent, for skill endureth when fortune doth flee. This one is simply invest in skill, invest in talent. Exit velocity, pitch velocity, speed, basically. That's the kind of stuff. If you can hit the ball really hard, if you can throw the ball really hard, if you can get a bunch of movement, just the stuff that you can't really learn, that's kind of generally where you want to go. It doesn't mean that you don't have the guys with all the talent in the world that can't figure it out. Not every uber talented prospect turns into a good major league player. I mean, I guess Joe Adele is a good and bad example of this because people were buying on Joe Adele for 4 or 5 years or whatever because the tools were there. Hits the ball so hard, runs so fast. Never worked out. But then, like, if you kept buying, Byron Buxton's a good example of this. Like, I guess that's an injury thing, but if you just kept buying those skills, those raw tools, like, pretty good chance they'll eventually pay off. Because you cannot teach a guy to hit a ball 120 miles an hour. Like, that's just something you can probably teach to increase a little bit. But there are some guys that can hit a ball 118, 119, 120, and most guys can't. Like, no matter, their physical peak is just not there. So when there's some kind of tiebreaker, I'm not saying that you take James Wood with your first round pick just because he has better tools than everybody else next year or something like that. But if there's anything close to a tiebreaker, maybe someone projects better than James Wood next year because, the strikeout projection on James Wood is going to be really high. And he was really terrible for the last 3 years and stuff, but it doesn't mean take Brian Reynolds over him next year or something like that. And that's not a good example because Reynolds was awful too. Like, those two aren't going to be close, but Ian Happ or somebody, I don't know, there's better examples, but like someone that had a better season than Wood and projects better than him next year doesn't mean you should take them. Like, bet on the talent, bet on the upside, the skills, especially with a young guy, right? Like, it's a little bit harder to do when you're in the Adele situation and you see, like, okay, I've seen this for 4 years of failure, and he's 27, 28 now, like, I'm starting to give up. But when it's James Wood and he's 23, he's got all the skills in the world, but just like hasn't been able to kind of put the, all the flaws. Like, what if he fixes this? What if he gets 50% better with the launch angles, with the strikeouts? Like, the tools just make him a first round pick easily. So that's the kind of guy you want to buy in on, especially in leagues where you can do a lot of trading and waiver wire stuff. Like, I went too far with this year personally in 2025 with just like, I picked Luis Robert and Matt McClain and all these, Byron Buxton. So 2 of those were terrible, but one of them did kind of work out. I went in there thinking like, okay, this is a 10-man league. I really know this stuff. I'm like way more invested than my league mates in it. Even if I bust out on most of these picks, I'll be able to fix it on waivers. It wasn't true. I did not make the playoffs. I had a bad season. But I took it too far. But it's a decent rule to follow. Like, be okay in these leagues where you can make changes on the fly. Trust your in-season management stuff. And, take some of these upside guys. Take at least a few. A lot of the key of winning a league is like, you want to be the guy that got the first round production in the 7th or 8th round. So focus on a little bit more on upside than the safety guys. But a good mix is proper. Number 8, thou shalt not be the first to draft a catcher, neither a reliever, lest folly be upon thee. So this was probably the first one that some people will disagree with, rightfully. So I kind of wish they were all more like this, but this is just like randomness, right? And these kind of things all play into each other, but randomness certainly factors in some places more than others. So like first baseman, hitters, pretty consistent production overall because they have it pretty easily relatively physically. But catchers, you see pretty wild swings. I mean, there's been some examples like JT Realmuto was like kind of a top 1 or 2 catcher for 3, 4, or 5 years in a row there. But pretty much it's just like changing all the time. I mean, Adley Rutschman was the number 1 catcher at least once. 3 years ago, I think he was number 1. And then 2 years ago, he was in the top 2 easily. And then, so like whatever. It just seems like every year some new, the top catcher underperforms and some sneaky guy, some middle round pick kind of comes out and becomes the number 1 guy. Does that mean, this is kind of a bad year to set up this because Cal Raleigh was like 2 or 3 times more valuable than the second guy. So what I'm saying here is that I will never draft Cal Raleigh. I think that's true. I think he'll be a 2nd round pick, and I'm not going to use a 2nd round pick on a catcher. I'm not saying he's not going to easily clear 35 homers next year or something like that, but he's just a lot more likely to do what he did 2 years ago than hit 60 home runs again. So, and the thing is, like, this catcher stuff is just it's so random. It's also so widely distributed. Like, the top guys will go in the 4th or 5th round, and then you can get a decent guy. Like, you don't typically lose a ton by waiting like 10 rounds, and same with relievers. Saves are pretty easy to find. And then forget about it in holds leagues or whatever. Like, you'll be able to find those guys for free. So just like, don't spend on relievers. There are situations, draft and holds where you can't do anything, where if you're like a sicko, like some of us in FBC leagues, where you're drafting a team in December and you can't make any changes at all, then yeah, you got to get one of the better bets for saves. But in a normal situation, like, no, don't be the first guy to start the closer run. Like, wait for it, let the draft come to you. Pile up the more reliable, more predictable hitters and starting pitchers before you get into that. Let someone else be the first guy on the catchers and relievers. I feel pretty strongly about that one. Number 9, thou take no heed unto the spring, for it is vanity and vexation of spirit. I don't even exactly, I mean, vanity and vexation, I guess I know what that means, but we're getting into some words. Yeah, I don't know. I should have proofread these. That's just too obvious, right? Like, but every year, no matter what, no matter how much we know, like, okay, I know not to take into account the spring. I'm not going to pay attention to the spring stats, and then you do because it's all you have. Like, you're waiting 5 months to get new information, and then all of a sudden you have guys playing baseball and putting actual numbers on the board, and you're just like so excited to get to it that it's hard not to. Even if you're like, oh, I'll just bump this guy up 5 spots because he's having a big spring, right? Like, don't even do that. Don't do it, man. I mean, every single year there's these spring breakouts that people bump, they jump up the board, and it's not worth it because the spring just means nothing. It's amazing how little it means. It really is amazing. You would think that there'd be some tiny little bit of signal in there, but it's just like it's impressive, and you have to remind yourself of that every spring, and you have to like almost just not watch it. I mean, injury stuff is a different situation, but yeah, I mean, Clay Holmes was one this year, 2025. And I guess you could argue that he turned into like a decent. I mean, he threw a lot of innings and had a pretty good ERA. So maybe not the greatest example, but I mean, he was getting boosted up into the top like 30 starting pitchers, and he did not pitch like that. Just because the spring was looking so good, he was looking so dominant, and it just wasn't going to happen for him. So, yeah, no matter how good you are at this, at not reacting to the spring, like you can probably still get better. And we'll have to remind. That'll be a good one to cite all the time when we're talking about the spring. And it's almost like don't even talk about it, but what are we doing? Like, how am I not going to talk about what's going on in spring when we've been waiting 4 months for baseball to start again? So we can talk about it and do whatever, but we should not be changing rankings or projections based on anything that happens in the spring. And then this brings us to number 10. Just to close it, this one, thou shalt not take the game too grievously, for joy is the portion of them that play it. Just don't take anything too seriously. This is just a more general. I think you probably should take, like you should take your marriage and like your kids too seriously. Although, just saying the word "too" kind of implies that it's wrong. Like you shouldn't take, no matter what it is, you shouldn't take anything too seriously, because that wording itself implies that something is not how it should be. So what I'm saying is, I guess, like, take your marriage, your family situation, take that seriously. Like, that it's okay if that stuff is kind of changing your moods and affecting and changing your life a little bit, because it's really important. Like baseball stuff, content stuff, Twitter, I guess, maybe this is a specific message to Twitter. Like, it doesn't mean anything, and we're not ever, I'm never being serious. And I guess maybe this is a disclaimer for me, just like, I kind of just wish we all lived in the world where you could make fun of people online and everybody would just accept, like, okay, he's just, that's kind of funny. Doesn't mean anything by it. This is the internet. It's not real, but that's not the world. Maybe it never was the world and I just thought it was, but I just wish that we could all just totally not have any like real life emotions involved with any of this stuff. Like, I wish I could just make jokes without any fear about how someone's going to take this, but I can't. So no matter how much I want this to be the case, like, I've learned to, okay, I got to watch what I say. Cause I don't want to be the guy that's like trying to make controversy and insult people. And I mean, I'm not perfect at it, but it never comes from a place, it never has come from a place of like maliciousness from me. I was just kind of thought this is kind of the internet that I would like, where everybody can just kind of make jokes and try to be funny and try new things, and nobody would ever like take it all that seriously. But that's not the case. So you do have to be careful. But anyway, like baseball stuff, I mean, it's fun, right? Like it's for the fun of it. And if you shouldn't like invest, I don't know, this is not financial advice, but you shouldn't like make your financial situation dependent on how baseball season goes or whatever. And then, yeah, you shouldn't get upset with your friends. I mean, this is something that me and my buddies are well out of now in our mid 30s, but 10 years ago when we were in our mid 20s and we didn't have families and stuff, we didn't have that like proper perspective. We would actually end up kind of fighting with each other, like, and legitimately getting angry with each other about dumb fantasy stuff. Like, someone does something, even if they did something super, like, quote unquote, offensively wrong in fantasy baseball, right? Like, they make a bad trade on purpose because they're out of it and they just want, some like actual real violation of like fantasy sports ethics. You have to totally separate that. Like, okay, I'm not gonna treat this person or think view this person any differently outside of this context. Like, I can choose to not play. Maybe they need to get kicked out of the league or whatever, but they don't not get invited to your wedding, or they don't not get invited to your parties or whatever you're doing. Like, so just totally separate the stuff. It's harder to do online when like you're dealing with people online and the only context you know them in is in this fantasy stuff. And there are just some people that I just like, they're so unlike me. Like, I just can tell that we would not be friends in real life. And it's just like, I really do not seem to like that. But you have to stop. You have to stop yourself right there. Like, I don't know the person. I'm not going to judge people on how they react online. And so I've been trying to extend that grace, and I hope people do it to me too. Certainly, people don't, but I don't know. So yeah, don't take anything too seriously. So those are your 10 commandments. Maybe some edits coming on, but I got them down on paper. Those are kind of the big ones. And again, maybe we'll expand them to 12 or 15 as more things come up. But I wanted to get that out there for you. Kind of a fun thing to do in late October when there's really nothing else to talk about. So let's hit the button, and it's going to go to the ending little ditty, and you're going to hear that nice metronome sound, and enjoy it while it lasts, because someday I'll fix it, but probably no time soon. But that's it. Talk to you next time. Bye.